Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. Recruiting is a battlefield where the rules keep changing and the chaos never stops. As the world shifted to remote work, real connection and unfiltered learning have never been more urgent. This isn't just a podcast, it's your survival guide. Welcome to the revolution, your digital bullpen.
Hey, Shad. Piece of Paul.
Sorry, fuck that up.
That's all right.
We'll try it over. Fuck it. All right.
Yeah.
All right, ready?
Energy.
Yes,
We're good.
a lot of energy.
All right, ready?
Yeah, welcome to the Digital Bullpen, everyone. We're super excited to share that we've hit 400 followers on LinkedIn and our YouTube and Spotify community is growing. So don't forget to like us, comment, share on any of these episodes so we can target our community and grow it. On today's episode, though, I am really excited to have Shad Griffin join us.
Hi, Shad.
The Shadster is in the house.
Shadster.
I've got so many nicknames for
these days. It could be misconstrued as something else.
No, stop. But one of the things about Shad and our guest today is he's been doing this for quite some time. Has specialized his whole career around accounting and finance, high-level professionals. If you've ever recruited in that field, if you ever needed to hire in that field, you probably have come across Shad. And he's here to kind of share some of his knowledge. So welcome, Shad. Thank you so much for your time.
Welcome, Shad.
Nice to be a guest. Good to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, so wait, what did you call them? Your nuggets of what? You call them what?
Shadisms.
Shadisms.
I love it. I'm so excited.
It just never gets old. One of my favorite stories about Shad, and he knows this, and I tell him every chance I get, I was super fortunate to sit next to this guy. When I first started in recruiting, I knew nothing. I mean, I was just thrown into the mix, working with a great team, but our office was growing and people got moved around. And for whatever reason, I was the lucky person in that office to sit right next to Shad. He guided, stop it. He helped me so much with after phone calls, hey, you should ask this, or even just listening to his phone calls, his approach to how to use references, how to tackle, hard conversations. I mean, he's probably seen it all on his desk. Yeah. So I always credit a lot to my success because of Shad.
I don't know. I was an admin. Well, hold on. We started as administrative assistants, Myrna and I, in 2001, 2, I think it was.
Yes, around that time.
I don't know. You scared the shit out of me, Shad, most of the time, because you were like this top biller with you were just doing your thing, and I'm just like, don't drop his calls. Don't drop his calls. Make sure his calls get through to him.
You guys were really young coming in.
So young.
I can remember the youthfulness of you guys.
Just trying to collect mad leads, and the KPIs on Friday from Shad was like a whole new negotiation tactic I learned.
Mad leads. That was, can I just say this? That was the most futile, stupid direction to go. What's the purpose of doing this? First, our boss looks at SOX complaints. They go, this has nothing to do with internal controls. I'm like, you are literally regurgitating BS. And I'm like, if you can tell me how this mad leads that we're putting in are going to generate money for a perm recruiter, I'll have my team doing it. But you haven't made the argument yet. Yeah. And when we work 100% commission, you're not paying us to do this crap.
Right.
So we're not doing it.
It's funny when you think about that, leads, we all know today in today's world that leads are our lifeline, right? And understanding and following leads and understanding how they work. But I think there was a disconnect in the description of what we were trying to do and how we were trained on it.
Yeah.
And the centralized system they were trying to talk to it was like a dead end system that didn't really tie back to our applicant tracking system or anything else. No. It was just a closed cul-de-sac.
It was a piece of paper.
It was
literally that size.
It was this size.
The math pads.
Here you go, Shad.
I got a hot lead for you. Look at
And
that disgust in his face.
all I can say is a hot lead is this company is using this recruiting firm to fill this position. That's a hot lead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not my cousin Jan's heard that this company might have an opening in 6 months. I'm like, thanks. No thanks. I'll figure it out on my own.
Well, and I think this is one of the great things about Shad is that because he's always been a commissioned recruiter, he just has these very strict guidelines and boundaries on his time, right? And anybody that's been out there recruiting has been successful. If you can't manage your time or be able to call BS on certain things, it's just going to affect your numbers and outcomes. But Shad, I want to hear, how did you get into recruiting? I think I know the story, but I don't know that I've heard this one in a while from you.
All right. So I got my degree in accounting from Arizona State University. Go Devils. I've got my maroon on right now. And we've got to represent. I've got my maroon Converse on too, but I'm not showing you those. Graduated from ASU in '94. Got a job working in audit. Did 2 years of audit. Got to audit some pretty big entities. Like I audited ASU, NAU. I audited Santa Cruz County, Pinal County, which is the seat is in Florence, Arizona, which there's not much in Florence.
Well, and back then there wasn't. I mean, now they're kind of, but back then
it was farmland. And then Santa Cruz County was going down to Nogales. And there's not a decent hotel in Nogales, so we had to stay a little bit north in Rio Rico. Anyway, did that for one of my favorite jobs was working for Arizona Correctional, doing an audit of Arizona Correctional Industries. It's the for-profit entity within the Department of Corrections. So basically, they used, I don't want to say slave labor, inmate labor. That's the same. Yeah, it pays about the same. And I actually ended up having to go and do on-site year-end count audits of the stuff that they're making, like clothing, license plates, whatever else. And I had to go inside the prison walls to go do the inventory counts year-end. Fun stuff. Anyway, after 2 years of auditing, I passed the CPA exam. I hated auditing. I wanted out. I got an email. I got a letter. This is back in '94, everybody. This is like snail mail. I got a letter from Carol McBride, another recruiter that's been in the Valley for a long time.
Carol McBride, yes.
Great recruiter, one of my mentors as well. And she said, hey, congrats on passing the CPA exam. Why don't you come in for a free career evaluation and a salary guide? So this is back in the days of Accountants on Call and Accountants Executive Search. AOC AES. So I went in, I met with Carol, and looking for a job out of my audit role into some corporate accounting role or something. Couple weeks later, I call her back. She goes, I don't have anything for you yet, but would you be interested in being a recruiter? And I said, I don't know. What do you do? So she told me I worked retail sales on a commission basis while I was in college. And I asked her, I go, why would you think that I'd be a good recruiter? She goes, well, when I asked you about at the end of the interview, it's like, hey, what do you think your employer will do when you come back and you tell them you found a job and you're leaving? And I go, oh, they'll probably wish me well. She goes, no counteroffers. And then I proceeded to sell her on why you don't accept a counteroffer.
Amazing.
Not even knowing about it.
Why not accept a counteroffer? And so she goes, maybe this guy could be a recruiter because he's selling me on not to take a counteroffer.
Right. Amazing.
So she told me about it. I spoke with John Kuzmic, who was another one of my mentors. You guys never got to meet John.
No.
Mm-mm.
John went back into accounting and then ended up becoming the CEO of a manufacturing company that his family had started back in Cleveland, Ohio, called Timco. Anyway, he was one of my great mentors. Carol was a good mentor of mine. And that's kind of how I ended up in this job. So AES.
And just super successful.
All became eventually Agilent Finance to Parker Lynch to LHH, whatever. Great trainings. I got to cut my teeth there for about 11, 12 years. And I pivoted. I went to another place. Non-competes can be enforced legally as well.
You're the best, Shad. I love that. I love you for that.
I ended up with Vincent Benjamin. I was the first hire they made in Arizona. for building out their brand here in Phoenix. And then I proceeded to build out the Vincent Brennan, the BB accounting and finance division for perm recruitment. I kind of felt like I was an anchor. A year later, they brought in Michael Swiss to round it out, and ended up getting someone like Matt Watson in there as well. And, it was fun. We built up a really strong team. It was a good 11, 12-year run. Then I decided I'm tired of making a lot of people a lot of money. I'd like to keep more. So
and you're doing it now.
So that's what I did. I went out and started my own shingle, and it's been nothing but awesome. So,
what's the name of your business now?
It is now called the Shad Group.
I love it.
I wanted a name that nobody would want to steal.
I don't know.
And it's very direct. I'm telling you, if you've ever been in accounting looking for work, recruiting there, you need to hire, you've come across Shad. And the things, I mean, it always goes back to the basics with you, Shad. And I know we talked about like your rhythm of recruiting, how you do your postmortem, like reevaluations during the processes. Can you kind of just share with us, like, what's your mindset to just, I think when we talked last, you mentioned you build, and correct me if I'm wrong, you build 800,000 last year.
No, I did about 750 in revenue last year.
Oh, that's it.
My best year ever.
Just that's it.
Things was really 2005 working for Agilon. I think that year I did 800, 860, something like that. I mean, I will say that at Agilon Finance, we had really accumulated a really strong team in perm in Arizona. And I think on my team at the time, the really strong recruiters, and these are anybody that's in Arizona, they'll know these individuals, and I have nothing to offer them. Christine Sewell was kind of the tenured, grizzled veteran.
Yes, Christine.
I know. She's still on my Facebook. I mean, her and her husband, like, I love to see their adventures. Yeah, she's awesome.
Then I had Dave Bowler, who we started out as auditors together. I came into the industry. He went into internal audit. A year later, I recruited him to come join me at Agilon. Then about 5 years into that tenure, we ended up getting Eric Ryan and Jessica Corral came over on our team. So there was like 5 of us on that team.
Powerhouse people. Powerhouses.
We were hustling. And look, those 3, they ended up going on and doing the head farmer thing, and they're doing great. I'm happy for them. I love the system.
Same.
So that's kind of where I kind of started. But I think your question was getting back into kind of where, getting back to my metrics, my foundations, what are the things that I do? Talking about billings and stuff, though, I did the billings above 800 because the team I had around me, they were really good at feeding me a lot of stuff. And so we were able to build a lot of momentum that way, which is great. But what I've always tried to coach, because I've helped build and hire and train a lot of people, realistically, you got to be interviewing between 7 and 10 people a week. And you need to keep about 5 viable job orders on your desk at any one time. And I told any recruiter that's in a system, if you have 5 viable jobs and you're interviewing 7 to 10 people a week, you're going to make great money as a recruiter. Also, stay in your lane. If you're accounting and finance and if you're accounting and finance and you work in contingency recruiting, you don't recruit people outside of your structure of what the roles you normally handle. Because if you do, you're going to recruit 10 to 15 people in a job you're never going to be able to place any of the other ones in. The reason you work contingency is that you're going to build up a pool of the same types of profiles consistently, so that if you don't place that one person in for this role, the 7 or 8 people you present to that one, you can still present them on other roles that are similar. So you're keeping the momentum constantly.
And your references, your leads, like everything is in the same bubble, right? And so your
demand area.
Absolutely.
Don't recreate the wheel all the time, because then you don't get the momentum. You might make 1 or 2 big deals every now and then. They're great, but that consistency. I'd rather be called the dripper, the dropper, where you just drip, 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 and you're consistent. It adds up. I mean, sometimes, I know they're not sexy, but 2 senior accountant roles at $100,000 each, that's a $200,000 person. 2 senior accountant roles are easier to fill than a $200,000 a year controller role.
Right.
Probably 4 senior accountant roles are sometimes easier to fill than 1.
And everybody likes those big dollar roles. Like, I mean, they see them and
The
everybody's
big
like,
companies,
"Ooh, look at that."
yeah.
That you count the fee, but you're not thinking about like, yeah, the work that it takes to get that high level individual. And once, I mean, somebody like you, Shad, once you've been in the business for a while, like you get that role, you just pull from your, you're like, oh, I know
Your
this guy.
referrals.
We just went to lunch. I saw him at.
Well, there are two types of recruiters.
Yep.
There's ones that have a transactional focus and one that have a relationship focus.
Love this.
And either one can be effective. They really can. The relationship one is I look at every candidate I talk to as a potential client, as a hiring manager in the future or currently.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And every hiring manager client that I talk to is a future candidate as well.
Yes.
And sometimes they're the same at the same time.
Yes.
It's a relationship that you're building. And if you stick at this job long enough and you're consistent and you're transparent and you just try to help people, it just starts paying you back. They make referrals to you. I've always taught recruiters, your name is as much the brand as the company you're working for.
Yes.
And so I think that's why I named my company the Shad Group, because everybody knows Shad. Oh, I work with Shad. Shad.
Totally.
And it's true.
Yeah. When I train, I tell people, I'm like, you are literally the CEO of your own desk. Like you are the CEO of your own desk. This is your little business. And Shad went and made it actual business. So you took that kind of seriously there.
Yeah. So,
and something else that like really stands out to me about what Shad does on a day-to-day basis is he doesn't walk around thinking like, oh man, shucks, I didn't get that deal. It's like, okay, how did I miss that? What happened? I think we called it the postmortem on some of the stuff, right? And you and I had a great conversation about that because I think we both were kind of dealing with something around that same time, and it was like, it's just so like gut wrenching. But then you go back and evaluate what you maybe missed, didn't see, and then you can kind of like tighten up some of those processes that you have.
So Paul, you've done training for what's the company now? It was Parker Lynch, whatever.
Yeah.
So they used to have a form called Keys to the Close.
Yes.
Keys to the Close.
Oh my God, Keys to the Close. Oh my God, yes.
And so it's just, this job is not rocket science. It's about being consistent and about not missing steps.
Totally.
And so when you have candidates going out on interviews, there's a process you follow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you do that. You get it scheduled. Then you prep them for the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You try to prep the client too. Sometimes they're not as cooperative.
Right.
Because you can't control a client like you can a candidate sometimes.
Yeah.
And so trying to keep that candidate control and just helping them through the process. And if I can get a candidate to do 50% of what I coach them to do, man, I'm ecstatic. And then afterwards, the debrief.
Yeah.
And asking the right questions, the debrief. What do you like? What do you don't like? Where are your hesitations?
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your level of interest? What else you got in the pipeline? What's the timing on those things? Trying to make sure you know and can anticipate any pitfalls along the way. Closing them on the salary early and often. So as through the process. And then say we get to the end of the process and the client goes to somebody else. I like to ask the client, hey, I know you don't have to tell me this, but I'm kind of curious. Who'd you end up hiring? Tell me more. I want to find out, how did I miss out on this? What could I do better? Look, if they hire somebody I've never seen before and they're not in my database, I'm like, good on you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But if they hire somebody that I had in my database and I missed it, that's a me issue, not a them issue. And I'm like, how did I miss it? Was it a coding issue from the time I did the first interview?
And let's talk. I want to talk about this right here. Shad is a master documenter. Like if you have, and this is one thing that I will say a lot of perm recruiters do a horrible job at, is they miss so many steps in documentation. Because, and probably what made you, and I'm taking us kind of like hijacking it, because I think this is one of the things that has made you super successful, is being so hypersensitive about what you document and where, and using the ATS to like almost to nausea at some point. I remember like the people you train, they'd be like, God, Shad, like I know I missed this, I missed that, but like, tell me about
matters.
Like, service.
It matters.
So let me tell you my philosophy on documentation. I grew up in two companies that to be scalable, you got to document your interviews. You got to you got to go and get good notes. And I kind of do an interview in 3 phases.
Yeah.
The first phase is I tell the candidate, hey, first phase, I'm going to be going through your work history, making sure I understand kind of what you've done, why you left from company to company. I want to kind of know your salary progression, your last 2 jobs. I want to make sure that I have the narrative and the story. So if a hiring manager starts asking me questions, I sound like I know you well.
Yeah.
That's the first part. Second part, I'm going to flip it around and I want to find out what you're looking for. What's going to make you tick? And I go into what are your cross streets where you live at? Where are you currently working right now? How many days are you in the office? What's your commute to get to the office right now? What's your pain point for that? What are the top criteria you're looking for in your next role? Understanding that, what kind of position titles do you want to hear about? Is there any specific industry, size of the company? And I document all that. And then I ask them, okay, so I don't duplicate anything. What else have you done in your search for other opportunities? Have you had any interviews in the last 3 to 6 months that you didn't get? Tell me about that. And the reason why I want to know is that sometimes that gives me an idea of other jobs that I should be presenting you on that I don't even make the connection on. Because it's amazing how sometimes candidates will help enlighten you on where I should be presenting them by just telling you where they've already gone before. So I get all that. And now I'm ready to start presenting opportunities to them.
Yeah.
And when I talk to them, I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to present some roles to you. And sometimes they might be borderline. And as I'm going over what you've told me you want to see and what you've done, I know that I'm stretching it. And I'm going to tell you I'm stretching a little bit. So don't think that I'm disregarding what you've told me. I don't want you to feel like you're disrespected, but I'd rather have you tell me no.
Yes.
And like yourself than not present you to something thinking you wouldn't be interested in finding out that another agency got you into that company because I was too myopic to think you wouldn't be interested.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. Then conversely with my teams, I had to tell people, you want me to sell your candidate to another company? Well, guess what? I need to be able in real time without you in my presence, be able to look at the file notes from your interview that you did on them and be able to answer them questions as if I did that interview. And if you don't document those notes, then I can't pimp your person. Pre-interview.
Yes.
I can't pimp them like they need to be pimped. And I'm like, so I'm not going to be successful for you. So help me help you document. Also in big systems where you're working big companies, if it didn't get recorded, it didn't
happen. Yeah. Chad, you know what's crazy is obviously been doing training a while, and what you just told me is I literally just wrote a training and I train people the same exact thing, and it's not changed over the history of like how years. And it's like there's some wheels you just don't need to recreate. And in recruiting, these best practices are kind of like they should be they're ingrained in you. They're basically part of your DNA, which is so huge. I have one question. How often do we talk about the counteroffer conversation?
Well, not enough.
So all the time, right? We should talk about it every conversation.
Yeah, the counteroffer. Sometimes if somebody's unemployed, it's like
sure.
And how you bring it up, there's so many different ways to bring it up. I honestly really like the way Carol McBride taught me how to do this. I mean, look, I'm a conglomeration of everybody that came before me that helped train me. And that I've listened to, but she says, so you go and you resign. What do you think your boss is going to say? That was the best way to do it. It's like, oh, it's an easy way to lead into that transition and if they don't say counteroffer, say, what about counteroffer? And then you can go right into that. Every time I extend an offer, I'm covering the counteroffer. But honestly, you should be doing that at the first interview. And I have my statistics down to some very basic facts. And that's simply this. 80% of people that take a counteroffer are not at that company within 6 months, and 90% are done within a year. And then I'm like, and the reasons behind that are varied. And you have to understand that half the time, it's the candidate still chooses to leave. And the other half of the time, it's the company that chooses to get rid of the candidate. There's lots of reasons why that doesn't work out. And then I'm like, do you want me to dig in deeper? Because I can tell you. And then I use a scare story. And this is the best story I've ever used because it's a true story. I had a stinking controller that I got an offer for. It was a pay increase, better opportunity all the way around. He went in to resign. His boss talked him into taking a counteroffer, matched it, everything else. 2 weeks after that dude took the counteroffer, the CFO called me and said, I got to do a confidential replacement of my control.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
And that would happen
I remember,
for someone like you.
Yes. And you know what's crazy, Shad, is like some people in the business have said, well, I don't have a scare story. Use Shad's. Like, use something, it's fine. Use Shad's.
It's happened. There's similarities in it. Yeah.
Totally. And I'm loving this. It's so good.
It's just real stuff. Look, I have almost 3 decades of just working a desk and being frontline. And there's not a whole lot that gets thrown at me that I haven't already had to deal with at least a dozen times.
Yeah.
Yes.
And usually I can anticipate it. Look, when you have a candidate and the only thing that's motivating them is money, that's a counteroffer waiting to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody that's in this industry knows. It's like the only thing that's motivating them is money. They can be bought. And so you just have to realize that that's what you're working with.
Yeah.
And you can coach accordingly, but they'll break your heart.
Yeah.
So many heartbreaks in this industry.
And the time suckage of somebody like that.
Yeah.
Because as you said earlier, time is money. Your time is valuable. There's only so many hours in the day. And some of those only for the money type ones, you can coach them all you want. And at the end of the day, they're going to take the money.
Yeah.
And they don't really care. But then you see them 15 years down the road, and it's like every 2 years, every 2 years, and they're in a new job. And eventually they kind of hit the wall of like nobody wants to hire them. They kind of become kryptonite.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing about what Shad is saying is he can also predict his placements coming through, right? It's because of the consistency, how he follows the processes, his procedures. And I know you've shared this story, but it's like, I forget the metrics, Shad, so please share, but it's like for every, we talked about it. What is that metrics for you?
Yes.
You will place a good recruiter that's consistent, will place 1 out of every 10 candidates in the interview. And they're going to fill 1 out of every 4 or 5 jobs. So they have about a 20 to 25% fill ratio if they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
And about a 10% success rate on placing a candidate.
Yeah.
So 10%. That's it. So 10%. It's like if I want to make this much, this is what I have to do. 10%
if
of the
I place 5 candidates, I need to interview about 50 people.
Yeah.
If I want to fill 5 roles, then I need to have about 20 to 25 jobs.
Yeah. And that kind of aligns with your 2-month lag rule. I know that kind of applies to the direct hire side, but even on the temp side, when you were on the temp side, it always went back to like 4 to 6 weeks of like what you were doing back then and why you're maybe not sucking, but you're behind.
If your desk isn't where you want it to be today, ask yourself, what was I doing 2 months ago?
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. There's about a 2 month. It's our job. If you are consistent, but if you're not one of these persons that does your activity like this, and you kind of stay just pretty flat line, like your level of activity is consistent, you can tell it's about a 2 month lag from what you do today determines what you're going to have in 2 months from now.
Yeah. It's
really consistent over time. And so that's why it's easy to manage people, because this whole process, managing is not hard in our industry. Because if someone says, I'm not getting enough deals closed, I'm like, okay, how many interviews have you consistently done? Oh, how many jobs do you have? And I'm like, okay, what are you doing for your pipeline building? You just go back 1 step in the process.
Yeah.
It's
manage backwards. Absolutely.
It's not that hard.
No. Shad, I got to tell you, like you are just I mean, if somebody's when they listen to this, it's one of those things that's like the nuggets. And if you guys are like, that's
followers listen.
Hey, they will. Every single one will, Shad. Actually, we're going to have, come on, Shad. They all will.
Shad's the freaking best.
But one of the things I was interested in, and I saw, like you were talking about, is because conflict resolution, you were talking about the Gottman method for conflict resolution, and that's something that.
We hit on that.
And I want to know what that's all about, because I was not privy to this conversation, but I wanted to, because conflict resolution is huge in our industry, right? I mean, we are basically mini therapists sometimes.
Sure. So I went out to lunch with a candidate yesterday, and she goes, and I told her about the Gottman. She goes, I think you used that on me a couple times during this process.
What is it?
Okay. So Gottman's his basically the formula. So I have been married 33 years.
Yeah.
You cannot remain married 33 years to a lovely lady who's very different than me, and she has agreed to stay married to me because she's a glutton for punishment. But we go through periods where we'll just go to marriage counseling. We call them tune-ups. We need tune-ups every now and then.
Yeah.
So, recently our youngest of our 5 kids is turning 20, and my wife's kind of in this empty nest syndrome, and she's like, what's my purpose now? And so she's going through this, existential crisis of who am I? What do I do? So we've gone back into counseling to kind of just figure out and make sure that we're talking the right language, because communication in any relationship is the hardest part of any relationship. Anyway, in the process of doing that, this counselor taught us, she goes, have you heard of the Gottman method? And we're like, what? And then, so she showed us the stuff, and then I started having to practice it, because anybody who's worked with me will know that empathy is not my go-to.
I don't know what you're talking about, Shad. You're like the most empathetic, like soft, like non-direct.
No, that's my wife.
Always about the feelings.
And I am a bull in a china shop. So, so what I learned, the Gottman method of doing stuff, is when somebody brings something to you, conflict, something's bothering them or anything else, the first thing you do is you respond with a statement of empathy. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to make up a scenario, I can Gottman you right now, but basically I can Gottman you. It's basically like, when you say this and this is how it makes me feel and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry you had that experience or you had that reaction to what I did. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm sorry. Or whatever it is, and say, and then you follow it up with a how or a what question. Mm-hmm. Not a why.
Yeah.
And not a defense. It's, hey, in situations like that, how would you like me to respond in the future? How can I show up for you right now that would be meaningful? How would you like to see this resolved? What would you like to see me do that could make this better in the future or prevent this from happening?
Yeah.
And listening. It's a way, really honestly, to elicit more feedback from the person and listen, understand, to gather the understanding you need before you start blurting out an answer or a defense.
Yeah.
And sometimes it requires you maybe swallowing some of your, like, I'm not wrong here, you're crazy. But when you respond with a statement of empathy followed up with a how or a what, you're engaging that other person in the solution.
And I love that, because we tend to get defensive, as people are, and that's personally, I always had that go-to as but I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think that that's super awesome to like share with somebody, because you're going to get conflict in our industry. And if you're not trying hard enough. Yeah. And, so it's.
And the other thing I'll say about conflict in an office where you're in a big team and you're all working towards the same stuff. And sometimes you're trying to compete for a client or compete for a candidate, and you feel like somebody's stepping your toes. And I know the rule is if it's not written, it didn't happen. I get that too. The challenge is when it was written, they're like, I just didn't see it. And then how do you resolve that?
Yeah.
I will tell you that I've spent so much time fighting over scraps that never materialize into real dollars. That had I just said, you know what? Look, I think I'm right. But you know what? If you want to if we place this person and you want to just split the fee on the candidate side 50-50, great, let's do that. Let's move forward. So I don't have to think about it anymore, because I can spend my bandwidth into things that are actually I can control and make money on.
Yeah, your leading indicators, right? Yeah.
Well, and something that kind of came in when we were having that conversation was that scarcity mindset. And I was like, wait, Shad, like scarcity mindset? No way. But we had just like a great like chat about that, because I really wanted to know, like, what was that mindset that maybe caused you in your younger days to allow that to like affect how you worked with people?
So I think there's several factors in that. For me, I'm going to just critique myself, because I think sometimes trying to be self-reflective is a positive gift that maybe time has taught me. Because I know I was really hard to work with for a lot of people, because I'm a bull in a china shop. And so for anybody who's worked with me in the past that I've offended, I'm really sorry. I'm going to own it. I know. I think I'm
That's the
just
best.
so focused on just getting to the goal, the end, that I don't realize I'm running over people in the process. I really
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
And people sometimes say you're tracking my stuff and you're going in and doing this stuff behind me. I'm like, no, I'm not that smart. I just put my head down and I just work. I just like anyway. But what was the question again?
The
Scarcity.
scarcity
Yeah.
mindset.
So I had 5 kids.
Yeah.
My wife didn't work. I was the only horse pulling that wagon.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I was like, I got to make sure I have enough money to feed all these mouths and pay the mortgage and get things ready for college and all this other stuff. And so there's some scarcity there. Maybe there wasn't a trust in my ability that I was as good as I probably was.
Hmm.
Maybe there was that insecurity that people would think that I'm not as good as I am. And so maybe there's bravado and bragging going on there because I had this under the surface a low self-esteem about
Yeah.
am I a faker? Am I real, or am I just a poser? And I think we
Mhm.
all have the imposter
Oh,
Yes.
syndrome.
I think you're going to have it no matter what in life. I remember. Yeah.
And so I think imposter syndrome plays into that scarcity versus abundance mentality as well.
Hmm.
Um, but then I just got to a certain point where I kind of like, no, I know what I'm doing. I have a good clientele. People call me. My numbers are consistent. I need to stop worrying about it.
Hmm.
And look, Adam Neville, he kind of was like, look, the quicker you can get people up and running and learning and performing, in the long run, they're going to make you more money.
Yeah.
Because the better if I can train someone to code people and find me candidates for my jobs, the more jobs are going to fill. And so I can run with running the jobs. I just kind of learned whatever team I'm on, I had to assess whether are we job heavy and candidate short, or we can't candidate short and job whichever it
Yeah.
is. And
It switches. Yeah.
I would focus my attention based on where it needed to be at that time.
Yeah.
And there's a normal cadence to your desk, and you just kind of know that if you're having your second round of interviews on a lot of your jobs, you better start hustling to get new jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Shad, you talk a lot about teams, and I mean, obviously, you've run a lot of teams, you've been part of a lot of teams, and now you're running, a company. Let's talk a little bit about. You talked about like toxic work environments and culture killers, and I think that's like it's interesting because in recruiting, I actually just on LinkedIn the other day, there was this feed that I commented about how if you're not firing your top biller who's toxic, you are doing a disservice, right? And so like there's this level of like what is toxic and what is a culture killer. So what is like tell me about that. Like, I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay, I'm not going to give any names to any of these examples.
No, we should never do names. That's okay.
So I'm not, because I don't want to badmouth anybody that I've ever worked with. In fact, if you've noticed, every time I've said somebody's name, it was to say,
no,
yes.
You are very positive. You are always very positive. I love that.
I'm just letting you guys know. So I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, so to speak. What causes toxicity is I think that people are doing things just to get back at somebody else on your team, not to be productive necessarily. Like if you have a rule that somebody has to be contacted every 90 days to keep ownership, and somebody has a search engine that basically grabs candidates at 91 days with no contact for updates, that's a toxic person.
Yeah.
I think people that track activities of like marketing calls or whatever else and puts a follow-up on those people's marketing calls 2 weeks after they made the initial marketing call. That's toxic.
Yeah.
What I've also found is that when I had people come to me and complain about somebody doing something that they felt was shady, inevitably what I found was the only reason they know somebody like that would be doing something shady like that is because they actually are doing that.
Yeah. Interesting.
What I found is that the people that are loudest about complaining about what other people are doing are usually the ones that are engaging in that behavior.
That's a good point.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so what frustrated me in some of my teams before is that I had management that were like, well, this person is giving us $300,000 a year in billings a year. How are we going to replace those billings? And I'm like, well, we have younger people here that can go after those clients that person's getting right now. And we have other people that will be able to look at the candidates that this person's producing. And we're going to remove this cancer from the team So maybe it's going to be thinning out a tall tree that's keeping things too shaded so these younger trees can grow up and become bigger trees.
I freaking love that.
And so, I mean, the other things that I found that were really hard is that when you have individuals on your team that you consistently hear, I called so-and-so and they haven't called me for 2 weeks. That's a reflection on my company and my team. And they're also sitting on a candidate or a client that could be making us money, but because they're not being proactive in getting back to people on a timely basis, they're leaving money on the table. Or if a recruiter on my team has a job order and they're getting submittals of candidates and they're sitting on those submittals for 3 to 4 days before getting them in, what's going to happen when our competition is a little bit more on their game? They talk to the candidate, the same candidate, and they decide to just submit the candidate's resume in just to see what happens. And all of a sudden, that candidate gets submitted to the company before the recruiter who had it in their inbox gets it submitted. I'm like, I can't tell you how many times Ben Howard did that to me when I was at Agilon and he was at Robert Half. Get a candidate in before I can get them submitted. So you got to work fast, put fastest to the dollar. And I always got really annoyed when somebody would say, I'm like, hey, have you got follow-up on these people? I'm like, it's Monday. Like, oh, I'm scheduled for a call on Thursday or Friday with this person. And I'm like, what? Why
but we got to move
4 days to get back to the person? I go, time kills all deals. Those are attributes that just drive me nuts. And if they won't change, honestly, I don't know. I
could tell. I struck a nerve there. I struck a nerve. But no, I appreciate that because I think it's important to remember, like in when you have people that are, I think that what resonates with me is that when you have people that are more concerned about what other people are doing as opposed to their own business and running it, like there's an opportunity there to either redirect or redirect out, right?
Yeah, I don't like recruiters that sit on accounts because that's my account. And I'm like, well, you're not really developing or mushrooming that account. And we know other companies are in there doing business and you're not developing it. And so it's like, if you want to own that account, you got to develop that account. And so I do like, when I first started at Agilon, it was like companies were protected. And then it became decision makers became protected. And so you just learn that, okay, that person has a relationship with that one recruiter. Great. I'm going to develop a relationship with everyone else around them. And in a sense, you almost just kind of insulate or isolate that one recruiter relationship and you have all the other ones. Eventually, that recruiter just abandons that relationship and gives up. Because, like, you're all over this account. I just got to agree that you outdid me on that. And, and then if it happens to me, my attitude is like, awesome. I have now more time to go focus on other companies now. You can do that, get the jobs from that one, and I'll get you 3 candidates when you get a role.
And there's just we could go on and on. I know we want to have you on more often, Shad. We've talked about this, but for those listening, for those who maybe are thinking about getting into recruiting, for those that have been in recruiting, maybe questioning if they should stay in recruiting, what's the one thing everybody should know to future-proof their career if they are going to stay in recruiting?
What I've learned about recruiting is that you fire yourself.
What do you mean?
Which means that if you're producing, a company's not going to get rid of you. It's just that simple. If you're producing, you'll always have a job. And
unless you're toxic.
Unless you're toxic. And then my advice is, if you're toxic and you can't work on a team, go hang your own shingle and try to do it on your own. And maybe then if you're successful, it's because of you. And if you fail, it's because of you. But
I love that.
I just think that if you just work the model and you have some common sense, you can be successful. I'm not worried about AI at all. In fact, AI is going to make my job easier.
Yes. Thank you. It allows you to do the stuff you're good at more often.
I still say 90% of our job is psychology. Because someone switching jobs or a hiring manager hiring someone, it's a lot of psychological, like getting over it. There's accounting and finance people, they suffer from paralysis by analysis a lot. And and getting them brave enough to pull the trigger on the hire because they're afraid, what if this person doesn't work out? How's it going to reflect on me? It's like, oh my gosh, let's talk through that.
Yeah.
Or a candidate, well, what happens if, what happens that? I'm like, sometimes you have to go, okay, let's run that through. What happens if this? Let's go worst case scenario, go. It's like,
I love it. Well,
but that's what I tell like somebody who's like, how do I future proof my career? Your name is your brand.
Mm-hmm.
Be consistent, return your phone calls, build relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't be so transactionally focused, because if you're just so focused on the transaction and you make a bad placement because you don't tell the truth, or you're being shady or slimy, or somebody tells you they've accepted a job that wasn't yours and you kind of throw a hissy fit and you act like you're pissed off.
Yeah.
Guess what? That person's never going to call you again.
Right.
Yeah. And they could be like a leader in the next, like promote into like a higher manager role
you're never going to, you only win in 10%. So understand there's 90% failure. So you have to deal with it. Yes.
So the question is like, so that's the value proposition. So what do I tell the other 90% that I'm not going to be placed? And I'll tell them, I'm like, they said, what are my chances of you placing me? I go 1 in 10. I'm like, so for the other 90%, I go, here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to coach you on how to do interviews.
Give back.
I'm going to fix your resume. I know you'll pay somebody a lot of money to fix a resume. If I get you submitted out, every resume I send out to a client gets fixed. And believe me, they need to be fixed. And so one of the things that I think has made me successful is that I have a formula on how I format resumes. And so when my clients start seeing resumes from me, they're so similarly formatted that they're able to compare the candidates super simply. Because there's a basic format to all my candidates' resumes. So these are little things that I would tell anybody coming in this industry. Just proof it. Don't forget the small things and be consistent.
Yes.
Well, Shad, I love it. I mean, as I said, like we are definitely going to have you back on because I'm really interested. There's so much that you have so much knowledge, and I definitely appreciate it. And there's so many nuggets that people have gotten, but what we haven't got, well, actually, we did get to know a little bit about you and your life, talking about, the Gottman method. But I want to ask the fast four, the first one, I hope it doesn't throw you off, is what are your top 3 favorite songs of all time? Maybe the soundtrack to your life.
Well, my favorite saxophone riff is Careless Whisper.
Okay.
I gotta say, I love Jump from Van Halen.
Okay.
You can't listen to that without just going, yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know. I like anything I'm listening to in the moment.
Okay. Yes.
But I mean, Broadway tunes, give me some Broadway tunes all day long. I love them. Can't sing them, but I love them.
I love it.
I did not know that about you, Shad. I love that.
I tell you, Paul, you'll appreciate this. I am the gayest straight man you'll ever meet.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
There you have it.
And there it is,
Shadster.
And there it is. All right, we got 3 more questions for you before we round it out. Yeah.
Yes. What's a favorite book you often recommend or enjoy reading, or in any of them specific to recruiting?
Oh, I don't read.
That works too, Shad.
Do you audiobook?
I actually podcast now.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's really funny because I'm a recovering Mormon at this point. So I listen to a lot of kind of post-Mormon podcasts, and I listen to Rogan. And
there you go. Yeah.
And the only reason I listen to Rogan is he has so many eclectic guests.
Yes.
You can get an education in a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
And do I agree with everything? Nope.
No.
But I find it fascinating. And
I love all of his UFOs, like people. Anytime there's like a UFO expert, I'm like, I gotta listen to that one.
Myrna's the biggest conspiracy theorist.
Yes.
One of my favorite ones was listening to the guy that talked about the moon landing was fake, and I'm like, I think I could be convinced that was fake at this point.
Love it all.
Oh my God.
It's the mind thinking a little different. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I love that.
So
it's
third
just
question. Information.
Yeah, it's information. Yeah.
All right, third one. After a long day of recruiting, what does Shad do to unwind?
It depends on what day of the week.
Okay.
So what I've also learned, so I'm going to start this in reverse. What I know that every good recruiter that I've ever met with, they have a routine, and usually it entails getting up and getting the hardest part of their day done first.
Yeah.
So the rest of the day is easy. So I get up and I abuse myself, like by exercise, cold plunging, sauna, whatever it is. It's done by 8:30 in the morning. So the rest of my day is easy because I know at the end of the day, my mental state is bad. So most of the time in the evening, eat some food. My wife makes some amazing food. We've been doing a lot of just watching. We're old folks now, and we just sit on the couch and
watching
Netflix or whatever streaming show.
What are you binge watching? What are you binge watching right now?
Right now, there's a couple things I'm binge watching together with my wife. So we're trying to get through all 5 seasons of Breaking Bad.
Okay. Oh, such a good one.
I got to tell you, the pacing, not so great.
Agreed. And I hate when people say, like, just give it more time. And I'm going to be one of those people. You'll love it.
I'm on the last season. It's finally getting momentum. But I find myself doing Sudoku through some of those episodes just to kill the time in between because it's like, oh my gosh, can you kill the damn fly? I'm like, my gosh.
Don't ruin it for me. All right.
So no, I didn't ruin anything. I gave you the fly episode. And everybody who's ever watched that series will know, the fly episode was really slow. I've been doing American Primeval. I'm going through the Night Agent right now, or Night Desk, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Anything Marvel. I've been doing all the series there.
Yes.
I just got done with Creature Commandos. I am a kind of a comic book nerd that way.
Love that. So, I didn't know that.
Those are some of the things I'm binging and watching in the evenings. And then I'm not gonna lie, I like a happy hour on the weekends.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed many happy hours with you, Shad, and we hope to have more.
Yes.
Always a good time. It's about the hang.
Yes.
The hang is for sure. What about what are you like grateful for in life these days?
Yeah. Last question.
I am grateful for the relationships that I've been able to develop through recruiting over the years. And I'm trying to value those a lot more. And when I bump into people that I've worked with over the years, I try to make sure that I'm telling them that I valued that time that I had with them. And it was a fun experience. I value the experiences that I have with my kids. You get to a certain point in your life where you already have accumulated all the material stuff you really care about. And people are like, what do you want? And I go, I want experiences. I want experiences with you, kind of a thing. And so I've gotten to the point where it's about the hang and just being with people.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so and it's the time I get to spend with people that I like that I think I find I'm really grateful for.
Yeah. You've got a great wife, a great family, grandkids,
a great beard.
The G-pod
he's got it all.
Look at that beard.
Well, Shad, I got to tell you,
healthy beard going on
I'm so grateful for you being on our podcast, and thank you so much for spending time with us. And I can't wait to get this out because I know there's so many nuggets that whether you're 1 year or 20 years, like you'll get something from this that you're like, I should do that. So
well, it's been a hootenanny. So
a hootenanny. I love
Shad is
I'm breaking out the old timer words here, man.
Well, Shad, thank you so much. And thank you for joining your Digital Bullpen. We love that you're part of our community. And we're going to have like 600 followers after this crap. I love it.
Oh, for sure.
Well, I'll make sure I put it out on my company LinkedIn page. And I'm sure
will.
I'll just multiply the reach. I'm sure.
Yes, please. Thank you.
15 followers or something like that.
That's not true because I know who's managing your page. That's not true.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Shad. It's good to see you.
Yes, thanks, Shad.